Admiral Reth watched the blue planet grow larger on his display screen. 47 worlds had surrendered to him using the exact same approach. This primitive ball of rock and water would be number 40-8. The Harvest Coalition fleet hung at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metal insects. 300 warships, each one capable of burning a continent to ash. Reth had studied Earth's file during the long journey through folded space. The natives had barely reached their own moon. They used chemical fuel to escape their gravity well. Their weapons were crude projectiles and basic energy beams. According to every measurement, they were decades away from being a real threat, perfect targets for resource extraction. Reth's second officer, a thin creature named Bryn, approached his command platform. "The scans are complete, Admiral. The planet contains exactly what the mining corporations requested. Rare metals, water reserves, and a breathable atmosphere. The native population is approximately 8 billion. And their military capability?" Reth asked, though he already knew the answer. "Primitive. Their largest vessels barely reach low orbit. We detected several hundred defense satellites, but their energy output is minimal. They appear to rely on kinetic weapons and early laser technology." Bryn paused, his sensor stalks twitching with something like amusement. "They launched several space stations over the past century. We could destroy all of them with a single cruiser." Reth nodded. This was always the easy part. The hard part came later, managing the conquered population and organizing the mining operations. But the conquest itself? That was routine. "Open a transmission channel." "All frequencies," Reth ordered. The communications officer worked quickly. Within moments, a light appeared on Reth's console. Indicating Earth was receiving their message, Reth spoke clearly, using the standard subjugation protocol that had worked on every other primitive world. "Attention, inhabitants of the planet you call Earth. This is Admiral Reth of the Galactic Harvest Coalition. Your world has been selected for resource integration. You have 12 standard hours to transmit your surrender. Evacuate your military installations and prepare for peaceful transition. Any resistance will result in orbital bombardment of population centers. This is your only warning." He closed the channel and settled back into his seat. Now came the waiting. Some species surrendered immediately. Others took the full 12 hours, hoping for some miracle that never came. A few foolish ones actually tried to fight, which usually ended within minutes. 8 hours passed in relative silence. Reth reviewed mining reports from other conquered worlds. Bryn monitored Earth's communication networks, which had exploded with activity the moment the message was received. Panic mostly. Arguments between their various tribal governments. Religious leaders proclaiming the end of times. Scientists desperately trying to calculate if they had any chance of survival, standard behavior for a species. Facing extinction. Then something unexpected happened. A transmission came from Earth, directed specifically at Reth's flagship. The communications officer looked confused. "Admiral, they're requesting a direct channel." "Put it through," Reth said. A human female appeared on his screen. She wore a dark uniform with insignias that suggested military rank. Her face showed stress, fear, and exhaustion. She looked exactly like every other desperate leader Reth had seen before. "I am Captain Nora Reeves of Earth Defense Coordination," she said, her voice shaking slightly. We have received your terms. We understand the situation. But we need more time." Reth leaned forward. "You have 12 hours. That is more than sufficient." "Please," Nora said, and Reth noticed her hands were trembling. "We have 8 billion people. Our evacuation systems are not designed for this. We need time to move civilians away from military targets. We need time to prevent mass panic. We're asking for 8 additional hours. Just 8 hours to minimize casualties." Reth considered this. The request made sense from a primitive perspective. These creatures actually thought they could evacuate cities fast enough to matter. They did not understand that when the bombardment came, there would be nowhere to hide, but giving them extra time cost nothing. Let them scramble and panic. Let them exhaust themselves moving their populations around like insects fleeing from a boot. It would make the final surrender even more absolute. You have 8 hours, Reth said. Use them wisely. At the end of that time, my fleet will advance to weapons range. Any military installation still active will be destroyed. Any vessel still in orbit will be eliminated. Comply or burn. There is no third option. Nora's face went even paler. Thank you, she whispered, and closed the channel. Bryn approached again, his sensor stalks drooping with something like pity. They actually think they can save themselves. Let them hope, Reth said. Hope makes the surrender easier to accept. The 8 hours crawled by. Reth watched his monitors as Earth's military vessels retreated toward the planet's surface. Their defense satellites went dark one by one. Their orbital stations began emergency evacuations. Every single sign pointed to complete capitulation. Bryn reported energy spikes across the planet's surface, but they appeared to be power plants shutting down or cities going into emergency protocols. Nothing that suggested military preparation. Nothing that looked like resistance. They're actually doing it, Bryn said, sounding almost disappointed. Complete withdrawal. No fight at all. Reth had seen this before. Some species simply accepted their fate. It was almost sad in a way. Where was the defiance? Where was the pride? These humans were rolling over like trained animals. The 8 hours ended. Reth stood from his command seat and addressed his fleet. All ships, advance to attack formation. Weapons range in 30 minutes. Prepare for planetary suppression operations. 300 warships began moving forward. Closing the distance to Earth, Reth watched the planet grow larger on his screens. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Soon it would be brown and gray, strip-mined and harvested until nothing remained but profit margins. His communications officer suddenly spoke up, confusion in her voice. Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from Earth. Put it through, Reth said, expecting final surrender terms. Nora Reeves appeared again. But this time, something was different. The fear was gone from her face. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were hard. Admiral Reth, she said quietly, we asked for mercy. You offered subjugation. You gave us 8 hours, and we thank you for that. We used the time well. Reth felt the first stirring of unease. What are you talking about? You should have left, Nora said. Then every alarm on every ship began screaming at once. 3 days before the alien fleet arrived, Dr. James Walsh was eating a sandwich at his desk when the numbers on his screen stopped making sense. The international space monitoring array stretched across 12 countries and 3 continents. It watched for asteroids, tracked satellites, and measured gravitational fluctuations in deep space. James had been analyzing data for 15 years, and he had never seen anything like this. The gravitational distortion was massive. Something huge was moving through folded space, heading directly toward Earth's solar system. The computer calculated the mass, and James dropped his sandwich, 300 objects, each one the size of a city block. All moving together in perfect formation. He reached for the emergency phone. 18 hours later, James stood in a conference room deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by people whose faces he had only seen on television. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists from every major nation. The room was silent as he finished his presentation. They'll arrive in approximately 70 hours, James said. Based on their trajectory and velocity, they're not natural objects. They're ships. President Richard Hayes of the United States spoke first. His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the table edge. How long until they reach Earth? If they maintain current speed, 4 days. If they can accelerate further, possibly less. Can we fight them? Asked General Parkman Sue, his accent thick with tension. Everyone looked at Defense Coordinator Sarah Mills. She had been waiting for this question her entire career. She opened a folder marked with security clearances so high that most people in the room did not know they existed. Yes, Sarah said simply. We can fight them. We've been preparing for this possibility for 50 years. The room erupted in confusion. Hayes raised his hand for silence. Explain. Sarah activated a wall display. Images appeared showing underground facilities, disguised research centers, and equipment that looked nothing like conventional weapons. In 1974, the Apollo missions found something on the far side of the moon. Debris from a spacecraft. Not human. Not natural. Evidence of a battle that happened thousands of years ago. She clicked to the next image. We kept it secret. Every major nation contributed scientists and resources. We studied the debris and learned that space was not empty. Other civilizations existed, and some of them destroyed each other. We made a decision. If we were not alone, we needed to be ready. Ready with what? Asked the Chinese premier. Dr. Amara Okonkwo stood up. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair and hands that trembled from decades of laboratory work. Quantum entanglement weapons. We cracked the mathematics 30 years ago. The problem was power. Each weapon requires the entire electrical output of a major city just to fire once. She brought up technical diagrams that made no sense to most people in the room. In simple terms, we can link 2 points in space and swap their physical properties instantaneously. We can take an object here and move it there, or take an object there and move it here. The distance doesn't matter. The size doesn't matter. What matters is having enough energy to make it happen. General Park leaned forward. You're saying we can teleport? Not exactly, Amara said. We swap. For every action, equal reaction. If we move something from point A to point B, something from point B appears at point of conservation of mass and energy. The universe balances itself. Hayes looked at Sarah. How many of these weapons do we have? 300, Sarah answered. We've been building them in secret for 3 decades. Underground facilities, hidden inside mountains, disguised as ordinary buildings. Each weapon is paired with a quantum target lock system. We can lock onto any object in space using its mass signature. 300 weapons for 300 ships, Hayes said slowly. That's not a coincidence. No, sir, Sarah said. We always planned to build exactly as many as we could afford. We hoped we'd never need them. But if we did, we wanted to be ready for a fleet-sized threat. The Brazilian president asked the question everyone was thinking. What happens when we fire these weapons? Where do the ships go? Amara pulled up a new set of images. The Mariana Trench. Active volcanoes. Deep underground caverns. The crushing atmosphere of Jupiter. We swapped their locations with places that will destroy them instantly. A ship in space suddenly appears 11 kilometers underwater. A vessel in orbit materializes inside solid rock. A warship expecting vacuum finds itself in an environment that crushes metal like paper. And what appears in space where the ships used to be? Asked the German chancellor. Water, rock, magma, empty space from Jupiter's orbit. All of it harmless once it's no longer under pressure or heat. Amara's voice dropped. The ships, however, will not survive. Silence filled the room. Finally, Hayes spoke. What do we need to do? Sarah looked at her notes. The weapons are ready, but final calibration takes 8 hours. We need to lock onto each target individually. We need every nation to bring their power grids to maximum capacity simultaneously. And we need the alien fleet to hold still long enough for us to complete the targeting sequence. How do we make them hold still? Asked General Park. We ask them to wait, Sarah said. We look weak. We look desperate. We look like we're surrendering. We request time for evacuations. Humanitarian concerns. Every species with a conscience understands protecting civilians. Hayes stood up. And if they don't wait? If they attack immediately? Then we fire with whatever targeting locks we have completed and hope we get enough of them to make a difference, Sarah said. But if they give us 8 hours, we can lock onto every single ship in their fleet. The vote was unanimous. Earth would prepare to defend itself. Every military installation would appear to shut down. Every orbital asset would retreat. Every sign would point to surrender. And beneath the surface, in 300 hidden locations across the planet, Weapons that could tear holes in reality would charge themselves for one single devastating strike. Dr. Amara Okonkwo returned to her laboratory and began the final calculations. She had spent 30 years of her life on this project, missed her children's birthdays, divorced because the work consumed her, lost friends who could never know what she was really doing. Now, in 70 hours, she would find out if it all meant something. Her assistant, a young physicist named David, found her at her workstation at 3 in the morning. "Doctor, you should rest." "I'll rest when it's over," Amara said, checking the power flow calculations for the 100th time. "What if it doesn't work?" David asked quietly. Amara looked at him with tired eyes. "Then humanity dies knowing we tried everything." "But it will work, David. The math is perfect. The engineering is sound. All we need is for them to give us time. And if they don't?" Amara smiled grimly. "Then we improvise. That's what humans do best." The alarms made no sense. Admiral Reth stared at his sensor displays as every warning system on his flagship activated simultaneously. His crew scrambled to their stations, trying to understand what was happening. "Energy spike detected," Bryn shouted from his console. "No, multiple spikes. Hundreds of them. Coming from the planet's surface? Weapons fire?" Reth demanded. "Negative. It's not weapons. It's something else. The energy signature is wrong. It's not directed at us, it's directed at us." Reth did not understand the distinction. Then his world turned inside out. The quantum entanglement occurred in 3/10,000ths of a second. Reth's flagship, which had been floating in the darkness of space, suddenly occupied the same coordinates as a section of Earth's ocean floor. 11 kilometers beneath the surface, the swap was instantaneous and absolute. The ship materialized in crushing darkness. Water pressure that could collapse steel hit the shields like a physical blow. The shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and small debris, had never been tested against millions of tons of physical force. Pressing from all directions, they failed in under 2 seconds. Water flooded through breaches in the hull faster than emergency systems could respond. Reth felt the deck lurch beneath him as structural supports buckled. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red. Someone was screaming. Reth realized it was him. The pressure increased. Metal groaned and shrieked. Bulkheads designed to withstand vacuum collapsed inward. Reth's command platform tore free from its moorings and he fell, hitting the floor hard enough to break bones. His last thought was confusion. How did they move us? How did they know exactly where to put us? Then the water reached him, and Admiral Reth of the Harvest Coalition stopped thinking forever across the fleet. Similar deaths occurred in 300 different ways. Ships appeared inside active volcanoes and lasted perhaps 5 seconds before molten rock melted through their hulls. Vessels materialized deep underground, encased in solid stone, crushed before their crews understood what happened. One unlucky cruiser swapped places with a research station orbiting Jupiter and found itself in an atmosphere so dense and violent that it was torn apart by winds moving faster than sound. A few ships got lucky, relatively speaking. Commander Talon's vessel appeared in shallow water, only 2 kilometers deep. The pressure still destroyed the shields and flooded half the decks, but the ship remained mostly intact. Talon, thrown against a wall hard enough to crack his exoskeleton, managed to activate the emergency beacon before losing consciousness. 12 other ships survived the initial swap with critical damage. The rest simply ceased to exist as functional vessels the entire attack. From first quantum spike to last ship destroyed, took 17 seconds. In orbit above Earth. 300 locations that had previously contained warships now held pieces of the planet. Spheres of ocean water flash froze in vacuum, creating perfect ice balls that drifted in zero gravity. Chunks of volcanic rock, still glowing with internal heat, tumbled slowly through space. Sections of bedrock and soil floated like islands torn from the ground. Earth's monitoring satellites captured everything. High-resolution cameras tracked each swap location. Scientists watched in real time as their calculations proved correct. The quantum entanglement had worked exactly as designed. In the command center beneath Geneva, silence ruled for 10 full seconds. Then someone started crying. Then someone else started laughing. Then everyone was shouting at once, a mixture of relief and disbelief and pure emotional release. President Hayes gripped the edge of his console and forced himself to breathe. Confirmation. I need confirmation. Sarah Mills read from multiple data streams, her voice shaking. All 300 primary targets eliminated or disabled. Detecting 13 emergency beacons from survivors. Long-range scans show no additional vessels in the area. The fleet is gone. Power status? Hayes asked. Global grids dropping to emergency levels, reported a technician. Blackouts across major cities as predicted. Backup systems engaging now. We'll have basic power restored within the hour. Hayes looked at the screen showing Earth from orbit. His planet. Still blue, still green, still whole. Still free. Any indication they sent a distress signal before we fired? Unknown, sir. The attack was so fast their communications might not have had time to react. General Park spoke up from his station in Seoul. What about the survivors? They'll report what happened here. Let them, Hayes said. Let them tell the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth. Dr. Amara Okonkwo sat at her workstation, staring at the readings that confirmed her life's work had succeeded. 30 years of calculations, tests, failures, and breakthroughs had culminated in 17 seconds of perfect execution. She felt numb. Exhausted beyond measure, relieved, horrified, proud, ashamed. She had just helped kill thousands of living beings. Beings who had families, hopes, dreams. Beings who were following orders from an admiral who thought Earth was easy prey. David put a hand on her shoulder. Doctor, are you okay? I don't know, Amara said honestly. We just committed genocide in less time than it takes to tie your shoes. We defended ourselves, David said. They came here to conquer us. To strip mine our planet. You saved 8 billion lives. I know, Amara said. But I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if there was another way. Sarah Mills appeared on the facility's communication screen. Dr. Okonkwo, status of the quantum systems? Amara checked her displays and felt her heart sink. Burned out. All of them. The energy load was too much. We can rebuild, but it will take years. Maybe decades. And we don't have the resources to do it quickly. So we're defenseless again, Sarah said quietly. Conventionally armed, yes. But the galaxy doesn't know that. Amara looked at the data showing chunks of Earth floating in space where a fleet used to be. They saw what we can do. They just don't need to know we can't do it again. Hayes addressed the Global Defense Network. This information is now classified at the highest level. As far as the galaxy knows, we can repeat this attack at will. Our survival depends on maintaining that illusion until we can rebuild our actual defenses. Is that understood? Affirmatives came from every station. The bluff was in place. Earth had won a battle by appearing weak, then striking with overwhelming force. Now they would survive the aftermath by appearing strong while quietly rebuilding. In space. The rescue beacons from 13 damaged alien ships continued broadcasting. Earth monitored them but did not respond. Let them be rescued by their own people. Let them carry the message. Let the galaxy know that humanity had teeth. The Drift was a space station that belonged to no one and served everyone. It floated in neutral territory between 3 major galactic powers. A haven for traders, refugees, information brokers, and anyone else who wanted to avoid government oversight. Commander Talon arrived. There 3 weeks after the disaster at Earth, still wearing medical wrappings around his fractured exoskeleton. He had been rescued by a passing merchant vessel that found his ship drifting in space, half-flooded and powerless. Of his crew of 40, only 11 survived. The nightmares had not stopped. Every time Talon closed his eyes, he felt the water crushing in around him, heard the screaming, tasted the salt and blood. He made his way through the Drift's crowded marketplace until he found what he was looking for. The assembly of free traders met in a large chamber near the station's core. Representatives from dozens of species gathered here to share news, trade information, and conduct business away from official channels. Talon requested an audience and was granted one immediately. Word of the Harvest Coalition's defeat had already spread, but details were scarce and confused. The assembly chamber fell silent as Talon walked to the speaking platform. He looked out at faces that represented civilizations spanning the galaxy. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. None of them understood what had really happened at Earth. "My name is Commander Talon of the Harvest Coalition," he began, his voice still rough from screaming underwater. 3 weeks ago, I was part of a fleet of 300 warships sent to claim a primitive world called Earth. We followed standard protocol. Overwhelming force. Demand for surrender. Wait for compliance. He paused, gathering strength. They asked for 8 hours. We gave it to them because we were certain they could not fight back. Their technology was decades behind ours. Their weapons were primitive. Their ships barely reached orbit. Then what happened? Asked a trader from the front row, a serpentine creature with intelligent eyes. They moved us, Talon said simply. 300 warships. They moved all of us simultaneously. Across space, instantly, my ship appeared 11 kilometers underwater. Others materialized inside volcanoes, underground, in crushing atmospheres. 287 ships destroyed in less than 20 seconds. 30 survived with critical damage. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Someone laughed. That's impossible. Quantum entanglement on that scale requires energy levels that would drain a star. I have the sensor logs, Talon said. He activated a data projector and shared the last moments of his ship's recordings. The sudden alarms. The impossible energy spikes. The transition from space to crushing depth. The water flooding in. The laughter stopped. A scientist from a species called the Leth stood up. Her name was Kara, and she studied advanced physics. This is real data, unedited. The quantum signatures are consistent with entanglement events, but the scale is unprecedented. How did they do it? Someone asked. A species that primitive should not have this technology. They looked primitive, Talon corrected. They appeared weak, defenseless. We assumed their technology level based on what we could see. We never considered they might be hiding their real capabilities. He pulled up Earth's location on the star map. This world, this species called humans, they let us think we were predators and they were prey. Then they proved we were wrong. The question now is, what do we do with this information? The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species wanted to quarantine Earth, declare the system off limits. Others wanted to approach the humans with trade offers, hoping to acquire the quantum technology. A few aggressive species muttered about gathering a larger fleet and trying again. Kara listened to all of it with growing fascination. When she returned to her laboratory later that day, she began researching everything available about Earth and its inhabitants. The information was limited. Humans had only recently developed spaceflight. They had no contact with galactic civilization. Their world was unremarkable except for its biodiversity and the fact that it had produced a species capable of such devastating defensive technology. She dug deeper, accessing databases of primitive worlds that had been observed but not contacted. Earth appeared in several reports going back decades. Scientists had noted the humans' unusual tendency toward both cooperation and conflict. They fought among themselves constantly, yet could unite against common threats with surprising speed. One report caught her attention. An observation team had watched Earth during something called World War II. The analysts noted that humans had gone from basic flight to splitting atoms in less than 50 years when threatened. When faced with extinction, they innovated faster than any species on record. Kara realized something the rest of the galaxy had missed. Humans were not technologically advanced by accident. They were survivors who adapted to threats by creating whatever weapons they needed. The quantum entanglement system was not stolen technology or a lucky discovery. It was a response to the possibility of alien invasion. If humans could create that kind of weapon when threatened, what else were they capable of? She compiled her research into a report and submitted it to the Galactic Science Council. Most of her colleagues dismissed it. A few took it seriously. One group took it very seriously indeed. The Preservation League was a coalition of species that believed in maintaining galactic order through controlled development. They saw Earth's display of power as a threat to that order. A species that could destroy 300 ships without warning could not be trusted, could not be allowed to develop further. Their leader, Ambassador Kreth, reviewed Kara's report with growing alarm. This species is dangerous. They hide their true capabilities. They strike without negotiation. They show no restraint when threatened. They were defending themselves against invasion, one council member pointed out. This time, Kreth said. But what happens when they decide to expand? What happens when they decide other species are threats? We've seen what they can do to a fleet. Imagine what they could do to a planet. The Preservation League began quiet discussions about the human problem. Some members suggested diplomatic contact. Others advocated for economic isolation. A few hardliners proposed something more direct. We should eliminate the threat before it grows, one representative said. Send a fleet large enough that even their quantum weapons cannot stop it? And if we fail? Asked another. If they destroy that fleet too? Then we've taught them we're enemies and given them reason to develop even more dangerous weapons. The debate continued behind closed doors while the rest of the galaxy processed the news about Earth. Trade routes shifted to avoid the solar system. Some species began developing countermeasures against quantum entanglement. Others tried to replicate the technology with no success on Earth. Long-range sensors detected the increased traffic avoiding their system. They also detected something more worrying: organized fleet movements in nearby sectors. Someone was planning something? President Hayes received the intelligence reports with concern. How long until we can rebuild the quantum weapons? Years, Amara told him. We don't have the resources or power infrastructure. We used everything we had for one strike. Then we need another plan, Hayes said. Because I think someone's coming to test whether we can do it again. Ambassador Liu Xin had never expected to be Earth's first official representative to galactic civilization. He was a retired diplomat who had spent his career negotiating trade agreements and border disputes. Quiet work. Unglamorous work. Work that required patience and the ability to make people feel heard. Now, he floated in a spacecraft approaching the Grand Assembly, a massive station orbiting a neutron star, and tried not to think about how unprepared he felt. Nora Reeves sat across from him, checking weapon systems that she was not allowed to bring into the assembly chamber. Dr. Amara Okonkwo reviewed technical data on a tablet, muttering equations under her breath. Remember the plan, Nora said. We project strength. We do not apologize. We do not explain more than necessary. I know, Liu said quietly. He had been briefed for weeks. Earth's survival depended on making the galaxy believe the quantum weapons were still functional and ready to fire at any moment. The truth that they were defenseless except for conventional weapons had to remain secret. The Grand Assembly chamber was enormous. 200 species had representatives here, though only 50 held voting power. Liu walked to the center platform and looked up at tiers of seats rising in all directions. Hundreds of alien faces looked back at him with expressions he could not read. The proceedings began with Ambassador Kreth of the Preservation League. He was a tall being covered in crystalline plates that reflected light in sharp angles. His voice was cold and precise. The species known as humans have violated fundamental principles of galactic conduct. They use quantum entanglement technology in an offensive capacity, resulting in the deaths of thousands. They did so without warning, without negotiation, without restraint. Liu waited until Kreth finished. Then he spoke calmly. We defended ourselves against an invasion fleet. We did not pursue the survivors. We did not follow them to their homeworlds. We did not seek conquest. We fired only when 300 warships refused to leave our system peacefully. You had no right to develop such weapons in secret, Kreth shot back. We had every right, Liu said. We signed no treaties. We agreed to no limitations. We were a sovereign world minding our own business when your Harvest Coalition decided we were easy prey. They were wrong. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species seemed to agree with Liu, others looked angry. Most looked uncertain. A representative from a species called the Voth spoke up. The quantum entanglement technology you used violates energy conservation principles. It should not be possible to generate that much power without destroying your entire planet. Liu smiled slightly. And yet we did it. Perhaps your understanding of what is possible needs updating. Kreth slammed a crystalline appendage against his platform. This arrogance proves my point. Humanity is dangerous, unpredictable. They must surrender their technology immediately or face sanctions. No, Liu said simply. Then you choose isolation, Kreth said. The Preservation League will ensure no species trades with Earth, no resources, no contact. You will remain alone in your system until you comply. Liu felt his heart pounding but kept his voice steady. You're welcome to try, but consider carefully. You're threatening a species that destroyed 300 warships in 17 seconds. Do you really want to make us feel cornered again? Before Kreth could respond, a new voice spoke up. Kara, the young Leth scientist, had been given permission to address the assembly. She moved to a secondary platform and projected data for everyone to see. I have studied Earth's history extensively, Kara said. What Ambassador Kreth calls arrogance, I call pattern recognition. Humans have been threatened many times in their history. Each time they respond with innovation. When faced with extinction, they create solutions. Sometimes violent solutions, yes, but always proportional to the threat. She displayed images of Earth, cities, oceans, forests, people going about normal lives. Look at what they defended. They did not protect military installations or government buildings. They protected their entire civilization. Every human on that planet. They asked for time to evacuate civilians. That request tells us something important about their values. It tells us they're manipulative, Kreth argued. They used that time to prepare weapons. They used that time to minimize casualties on both sides, Kara corrected. If they had fired immediately, Admiral Reth's fleet would have died just as quickly. But Earth gave them a chance to leave peacefully first. Only when that chance was refused did they act. She turned to face the full assembly. I propose an alternative to sanctions. Humanity has technology we want to understand. They have defensive capabilities we could benefit from. Instead of threatening them, why not offer cooperation? Liu seized the opening. Dr. Okonkwo, please explain what we're prepared to offer. Amara stood and projected technical schematics. The quantum entanglement technology can be adapted for defensive purposes only. We're willing to share the mathematical principles under specific conditions. First, the technology can only be used to protect against aggression, never to initiate it. Second, every species must contribute to a mutual defense network. Third, any species found using the technology offensively will have their access revoked by all other members. You're proposing a galactic defense alliance, said a representative from a peaceful species called the Mirren, with Earth at the center. With all of us working together, Liu corrected. Earth provides the technology. You provide oversight, resources, and cooperation. Everyone benefits from collective security. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species saw the wisdom immediately. Others distrusted any proposal that came from humans. The Preservation League rejected it outright. Kreth's voice cut through the noise. This is a trap. They're trying to position themselves as protectors while maintaining their weapons monopoly. I vote against this proposal and call for immediate sanctions. The vote was called. Liu watched the display as votes came in from 50 species with full assembly rights. 31 in favor of the defense network. 12 against. 7 abstentions. The proposal passed. Kreth stood abruptly. The Preservation League does not recognize this vote. We will not participate in any network that empowers a dangerous species. And we will take independent action to protect galactic stability. He left the chamber, followed by 11 other representatives who shared his view. Liu felt Nora's hand on his arm. That sounded like a threat, she whispered. It was, Liu agreed quietly. They returned to their ship and began the journey back to Earth. Halfway home, long-range sensors picked up fleet movements. The Preservation League was gathering ships from multiple systems. 150 warships, all heading toward Earth's solar system. Nora checked the timeline. They'll be here in 72 hours. Liu contacted Earth immediately. President Hayes appeared on the screen, looking exhausted. Ambassador, what's the situation? We bought time and allies, Liu said. But the Preservation League is coming? They're going to test whether we can actually fire the quantum weapons again. Hayes closed his eyes briefly. How long do we have? 3 days. Can we rebuild the weapons in 3 days, Dr. Okonkwo? Hayes asked. Amara shook her head. Impossible. We'd need months at minimum. Then we need a different solution, Hayes said. Find one. The transmission ended. Liu looked at Amara and Nora. 3 days to solve an impossible problem. 3 days to convince an enemy fleet that Earth still had teeth. 3 days to save humanity through cleverness instead of firepower. 72 hours was not enough time to rebuild a quantum entanglement weapon. Dr. Amara Okonkwo had known this from the moment President Hayes asked. The systems were burned out. The power infrastructure was damaged. Even with every nation working together, they needed months. But as she sat in her laboratory reviewing the weapon data for the 100th time, something occurred to her. They could not rebuild the weapon, but the targeting mathematics still worked. The calculations that had locked onto 300 ships simultaneously were still valid. She called an emergency meeting with Sarah Mills and General Park. We can't move their ships, Amara explained, pulling up equations on the display. But we can move something to their ships, something small, something that uses a fraction of the power. How small? Sarah asked. 1 cubic meter, maybe less. We can gather enough power from the remaining infrastructure for one tiny quantum swap. Just enough to prove we still have the capability, General Park frowned. What good does moving 1 cubic meter of material do against 150 warships? It's not about damage, Amara said. It's about the threat. We swap something non-lethal directly into their flight path, close enough that they can't ignore it, far enough that it doesn't destroy them. We prove we can still reach them. Then we tell them we're choosing not to kill them. Sarah understood immediately. A demonstration. We show restraint and capability at the same time. Exactly, Amara said. We can't win a fight, but we can win a negotiation. The plan was approved within hours. Every available power plant began storing energy. Scientists recalibrated what remained of the quantum targeting systems for precision instead of scale. The target swap location was chosen carefully, 1 cubic meter of water from the Mariana Trench, placed directly in front of the Preservation League fleet's lead ship. Ambassador Liu made contact with the fleet as it crossed into Earth's solar system. Ambassador Kreth appeared on the communication screen, his crystalline face reflecting no emotion. You have one opportunity to surrender your quantum technology, Kreth said. Comply or face destruction. We know you've been gathering intelligence, Liu replied calmly. We know you think our weapons are burned out. Your information is correct. We cannot destroy your fleet. Kreth's expression changed slightly. Satisfaction, perhaps? Then you admit defeat. I admit we can't repeat what we did to the Harvest Coalition, Liu said. But we can still prove we're not bluffing about one thing. Dr. Okonkwo, please proceed. Across Earth, power grids surged as energy flowed into the quantum targeting systems. The swap occurred exactly as calculated. 1 cubic meter of ocean water under 11 kilometers of pressure materialized in space directly ahead of Kreth's flagship. The pressure released instantly. The water flash froze into a perfect ice cube, tumbling slowly in zero gravity. Kreth's ship had to fire maneuvering thrusters to avoid collision. His sensors confirmed what his eyes saw. Quantum entanglement event, precisely controlled. Deliberately non-lethal, Liu spoke again. We could have swapped something deadly. Molten lava. Solid rock moving at orbital velocity? We chose water because we're not trying to kill you, we're trying to talk to you. Kreth stared at the ice cube drifting past his viewport. This proves nothing. 1 cubic meter is not the same as moving entire warships. It proves the targeting system still works, Liu said. It proves we can reach your ships from here. And it proves we're willing to demonstrate restraint. Your fleet can continue forward and force us to defend ourselves, or you can hold position and negotiate. Your choice. On Kreth's bridge, his tactical officer spoke quietly. Ambassador, if they can target us precisely enough to place objects in our flight path, they can target our critical systems. Ship cores, life support, command bridges. Even. If they can only move small amounts of material, they could disable the fleet ship by ship. Kreth considered this. The humans had just proven they still had the capability to strike. They had also proven they were choosing not to kill when they could have. That restraint was either weakness or confidence. He thought about the Harvest Coalition. 300 ships destroyed in seconds. Then he thought about the ice cube, a warning shot. A demonstration of precision and control. Hold position, Kreth ordered his fleet. Then he contacted Liu. What do you propose? The negotiations took 6 hours. Kreth demanded guarantees that Earth would not use quantum technology aggressively. Liu demanded the Preservation League withdraw and recognize Earth's sovereignty. Compromises were made on both sides. Finally, Kara joined the communication as a neutral mediator. The Galactic Defense Network is already approved by the Assembly. The Preservation League can either join it and have oversight of Earth's technology, or refuse and remain outside while everyone else benefits from collective security. Kreth was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. The Preservation League will join the network under the condition that we have equal access to the technology and equal say in its deployment. Agreed, Liu said. With the condition that any species found using it offensively faces immediate expulsion and sanctions from all network members. Agreed, Kreth said reluctantly. The Preservation League fleet turned away from Earth and began the journey home. Crisis averted. Humanity had survived not through overwhelming force, but through careful demonstration of capability combined with restraint. 5 years later, the Galactic Defense Network was a reality. Earth had shared the mathematical principles behind quantum entanglement weapons. Other species contributed resources, oversight, and technological improvements. The weapons remained purely defensive, verified by mutual inspection protocols. When an unknown hostile force attacked a remote colony world, the network activated for the first time. Ships from 20 different species, including Earth, responded as a unified fleet. The attackers retreated when faced with overwhelming coordinated defense. In the Joint Command Center, human and alien officers worked side by side. Nora Reeves, now a network admiral, coordinated with partners from a dozen species. Dr. Amara Okonkwo taught at the Galactic Science Academy, training the next generation of defensive technology experts. Ambassador Liu represented Earth on the Permanent Galactic Council. General Park stood at a viewing window on Earth's orbital defense station, watching ships from across the galaxy patrol in coordinated patterns. He thought about that terrifying day when 300 hostile warships had arrived at Earth's doorstep. Thought about the desperate gamble that had saved them. Thought about the even more desperate bluff that had prevented a second war. President Hayes joined him at the window. He was older now, gray-haired and tired, but still sharp. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the bluff had failed? Every day, Park admitted. But it didn't fail. We bet everything on the idea that showing strength and restraint together would be more effective than either one alone. And we were right, Hayes said. The galaxy learned what humanity already knew. The strongest defense is the one you never have to use. The best weapon is the one that prevents war instead of winning it. Below them, Earth rotated slowly in space. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. 8 billion people going about their lives, unaware of how close they had come to extinction, unaware of the sacrifices made to keep them safe. Park watched ships from a dozen species patrol together in perfect formation. "We changed the galaxy," he said quietly. "No," Hayes corrected. "We reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten. That survival is better than conquest. That cooperation is stronger than domination. That the species willing to defend without destroying makes better allies than enemies." On the planet's surface, children looked up at night skies filled with lights representing protection instead of threat. They grew up in a galaxy where different species worked together, where defensive technology prevented wars instead of starting them, where humanity's legacy was not the weapon that destroyed a fleet in seconds, but the network that made such weapons unnecessary. Earth had been tested twice, once by invasion, once by fear. Both times, humanity had chosen the harder path. Defense over offense, restraint over revenge, cooperation over isolation. And in choosing that path, they had not just saved themselves. They had helped save the galaxy from itself.